Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Anthony.
I'm struggling a little bit this morning. I apologize. My wife and I are. My wife's going through this kind of issue. She has this massive confusion, struggling with the fact that they're rational, reasonable, intelligent people who highly value something that she's convinced is utterly useless. My advice.
We're all convinced that's useless. Not just your wife.
It's been a rough week.
I think that, right. I think as soon as we realize that we're just not that smart, really, it's just better marriages.
We're the. I said this earlier. We're the only self-aware podcast that knows we're not that bright.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. All right, welcome. Anthony, in 2009, the Formula One team, Braun GP, went from nearly bankruptcy to winning the world championship in a single season. Thanks to the radically streamlined decision-making. While their competitors hesitated, they acted fast, innovated relentlessly, and shocked the racing world. What if your business could do the same, Anthony? Today on How to Founder, we're talking about accelerating decision making. Easy for me to say. I'm Chris Franks, and with me today is the incredibly intelligent and smart and good looking, may I say. Just trying to build up your ego.
Good looking?
Yeah, good. Mr. Anthony Franco. And today we are joined. We didn't even really talk about this, Jurriaan. Like you actually are currently someplace overseas, Jurriaan. Are you in the Netherlands right now?
I am in the Netherlands, only half an hour from Amsterdam.
That is amazing. A European guest. What time is it there? I'm assuming it's 9:30 at night.
It's 4 p.m.
Yeah, I can't do them. It's I never
almost.
Yeah, Jurriaan Kamer is an organizational change expert who's obsessed with eliminating bureaucracy and accelerating decision. He's helped leaders worldwide implement radical approaches to management, wrote a book inspired by Formula One racing, which Forbes loved. Forbes doesn't love anything. They're tough critics. And probably makes decisions faster than I could read this bio. We were joking before. Have you made the decision to pretend that you have an internet outage and just jump off the screen like, oh, it's fine.
Maybe.
Tough internet here in Amsterdam. Like, we got to go. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's just get to the big question first. Why does this matter to me as a founder? Why is really understanding the pace of my decisions? Why is this important for me to realize and to get better at?
I mean, decisions are the lifeblood of organizations. You know, everything your organization does or doesn't do is the result of a decision. So to me, decision making is a core capability of every organization, and there's a lot of companies that don't look at that closely and say, you know what, how can we improve this bit? You know, a lot of people and organizations, they feel that it could be better somehow, but there's only a small percentage of organizations that gets it right, and there's a good, there could be a big competitive advantage there.
I think it's an important conversation, Anthony, because we as founders, we want to believe that, we're scientific and we're a lean startup and we come through and we're very systematic about that. But man, how many people that we know, and I've certainly done this, is just stalled on big decisions, like just reach those moments where I know there's a decision left or right or straight, and you just kind of stall. And like you even said it, Anthony, sometimes the best decision is not make a decision in those moments. But Anthony,
so every time you decide to delay a decision is a decision.
Correct.
Right? So if you're comfortable having that decision made for you, by not making a decision, then maybe it is something you can delay. But a lot of times we see founders not making decisions because they know what the decision they need to make is, and they don't like it, so they try to navigate around making other smaller decisions to make the big one not to mitigate the pain for the big one that they know they need to make.
Yeah, I call it the cost of dragging your feet. You know, it's like when you're not making a decision, you're accepting that you're either not going to get the benefits of that decision for longer, or you just incur the cost of waiting.
I think that just to set the stage, and I know that this is a bigger point here, but a lot of times the early stage founders particularly, they don't make these decisions because they're scared. They're afraid, and they're afraid of the ramifications. And it's easier sometimes to sit in a place of possibilities than it is to choose a path and walk down that path. But I think that's a little bit of a fallacy, because it always feels like if you make a decision, you can always backtrack. But so long as you sit in this world of possibilities, you never actually learn anything. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, for sure. Like for some reason, and so first of all, I just have to be empathetic to the human nature of being afraid of getting it wrong. Like we can be dismissive of that, but that's just the truth. Like it's difficult to decide, and it could have consequences that we don't know. So people want to stick with what they know, and the unknown is always scary. However, I'm always surprised by how often people treat every decision as if it's irreversible, like you said, Chris. It's one of the famous quotes by Jeff Bezos, who built Amazon, of course, is that we have to get comfortable with making imperfect decisions, and we have to distinguish between reversible and irreversible decisions. And a lot of the times, if you know a decision is reversible, well, why don't you just do it and learn from it? Because another part of it is that we often don't really know what the right decision is until we try something.
Anthony, who's Jeff Bezos? What? I'm not familiar with that person.
Yeah, I understand. He's Dutch, so you wouldn't know him.
Oh God, understood. Yeah,
it's a Dutch reference. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no.
You probably talk about him all the time.
Which is, it's like we believe, particularly early on, that every decision, and in some cases they can be, but every decision has such a weight of importance on our shoulders that we struggle even to make the most basic decisions. And, Anthony, this is classically the entrepreneur versus entrepreneur thing. Entrepreneurs, it's easier to sit in this place before going all in and saying, I'm going to try this. But it's also, it's this fallacy to believe that you can't just take a step back and go another direction, I think. Anthony, is that true for you?
Yeah. So, you're talking early stage founders deciding not to move, right? That's not bad decision making. That's fear of risk. That's fear of looking like a fool. That's fear of failing. Has nothing to do with decisions. It's deciding that your comfort's more important than the thing that you feel like you want to chase.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and I think that it's just one of those things that you need to sort of tackle. But Jurriaan, let's talk about the actual decision making. So what I've heard is the best definition of a CEO, beyond the culture component and owning sort of the soul of the company, is to be a decision-making machine. And so as a founder, you also play the role most times of a CEO. And so how should I start to think about making these decisions? Give me some reference points here that I can start to anchor onto.
Yeah, so there's one model that I really like that I discovered in the process of writing my latest book. It was something that was coined by James Clear, who's also the author of Atomic Habits. And he says there's only 3 types of decisions. There is hats, haircuts, and tattoos. And
you and I have the haircut decision.
I know.
Yeah,
right. I know.
That's haircuts and tattoos. I really like it. Let's go.
I love it.
Yeah, it's instead of talking about reversible and irreversible, it's actually 3 different types. So you can, when you're going to buy a hat, you can try a lot of different ones, and if you don't like one, you can grab another one, or after a week or two you don't like it, you go back, maybe get your money back, or just go in the store and buy a new one. Like it's easily reversible. There's not a lot of consequences if you get it wrong. In terms of a haircut, it's also reversible, right? I mean, you're going to if you get a bad haircut, you might feel embarrassed for a while. It might be difficult. It might be, you feel ashamed a little bit. But for most people, and that probably doesn't include you and me, Chris, the hair grows back after a while.
I was going to say, I just got a haircut one time and it stayed this way. I have Anthony's face.
Some haircuts are tattoos.
Well, yeah, maybe. But the whole point is obviously. Bless you.
Sorry.
The whole point obviously is that it doesn't make sense to go and put in an analysis of all the possible haircuts you can get in a 10-mile radius, right? You just go to a barber shop that you trust. You go in and you kind of assume that it's going to be okay. You shouldn't spend too much time analyzing it, because if they get it wrong, it's okay. It's gonna be terrible for maybe a few weeks, but after that it will be okay. And then the third type of decision, those are the types of decisions that really should get careful attention before making it, and those are the tattoos. Technically, a tattoo is reversible, but it's not cheap and also not without any pain, I understood. So if you're going to get a tattoo, then you have to really sit down and say, what is the actual decision we should take? What are the possibilities? And then it is worth investing the time to get it right. But what we often forget is there's only a very small percentage of decisions that are actually like tattoos. So it's really about figuring out what type of decision is this, and how big are the consequences of getting it wrong, and is the time spent on deciding worth it?
Do you guys want to get tattoos when you're here in July? Jurriaan's coming to Denver maybe in July.
Maybe.
Like we all
I'll get the How to Founder logo tattooed on my ass. How's that, Chris?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what's got to be on your ass, Anthony. Like, it's, always bringing up his ass, Jurriaan. I really like that.
If you stopped grabbing it, Chris, maybe I would bring it up less.
Oh my God.
It's a nice.
It happens. It happens.
I really like the model, and so as a founder, with those stages of decision, I want to work in reverse order. So let's talk about the tattoo decisions first.
Mm-hmm.
Those are those big decisions. We tend, is it paralysis by analysis? How do I gather the right amount of data before I feel comfortable? And to what degree is this gut versus using data to make those big sort of company altering decisions?
Yeah, I mean, what are those company altering decisions? I mean, a merger, for example, or an acquisition, that's a tattoo-like decision. That's very difficult to reverse, very costly. Still, it's reversible. But in a lot of other ways, I know, when is it a tattoo? Like hiring someone? No. Firing someone? Okay, that could be tattoo type decision. They might not want to come back. But again, a lot of decisions are reversible. So yeah, it's really about quantifying the amount of time that's helpful, and especially when you start growing as a company, when it's more than just the founder, you also have to be aware that your team might be trapped in these kinds of dynamics, where it's like, ooh, maybe we get it wrong, or ooh, we should have another discussion about it next week. And I think in the terms of shaping the culture of the organization, it's important as a founder to be aware and to nudge the culture in the right direction when it comes to decision making.
I mean, Anthony, this is when we joke about only talking about early stage and scale up. In scale up companies, this is the epidemic. And there are companies that have scaled up that are the founder still wants to make, or the CEO still wants to make every major decision, and it grinds those to slowly. When you were scaling up, Anthony, how did you distribute decision making?
Terribly. In reality, you have to, Steve Jobs, and I'm gonna mess up the quote, but he said it the best. There's no reason for hiring experts and then telling them what to do, right? Like that's a bad decision. That's a decision that you're smarter than people that you hire, which is a decision based on flawed data. So
Your ego. That's the data.
yeah, exactly right. Any ego-based decision. Well, I shouldn't say any. Most ego-based decisions are bad decisions. Decisions come from experience, data, collaboration, and experience.
So I want to go through, and I really like this idea of just making sure that you frame decisions as tattoo decisions. These are big decisions, haircut decisions. They have ramifications, but they're short-term ramifications. And then hat decision, and so really classifying those. But I want to ask you about that concept, which is, as an executive or a CEO, to what degree do I need to be aware or knowledgeable of decisions, and what am I comfortable distributing? And if the whole goal here is for the organization to speed up and make decisions faster, how do I balance those?
Yeah, there's a very helpful thing that I often teach is something called the waterline. And it's invented by the makers of Gore-Tex, W.L. Gore company. They also make guitar strings and a bunch of other materials. And their founders, they had a similar challenge when they were growing. They really wanted to keep the spirit of making fast decisions alive. And the waterline is a helpful concept that you can use as a founder and CEO. And it is about, imagine we are all on a ship, and sometimes stuff blows up, but as long as that stuff blows up above the waterline, it's okay. We can go back to shore, repair the ship, and go on. But if it's below the waterline, the whole ship sinks. So then we're really in trouble. So as a founder, you can go and clarify what is the waterline for our organization. So does that mean, the moment we break compliance and laws and regulations, we might completely sink? Or is it, we can bear the cost of something blowing up that's less than $50,000? Like, is that an amount that is really going to hurt the business? Maybe it's $1 million, depending on how big you are. Maybe it's the amount of customers affected. It's a really helpful concept to at least explain to the organization and provide some systemic clarity about what is the risk appetite here, and what's the type of decisions that we can actually take more often without risking the sinkage of the ship. If you fail to clarify this, a lot of people are going to make up assumptions and going to just assume that we have to get clarity, or that we have to get permission for all sorts of decisions. And if you continue to feed that dynamic as a leader, you'll stay stuck in that approval requesting, approval giving mode. So when that happens, it's really about, if I want to really get out of this, I have to step back and not feed my ego of feeling important because everybody's asking me for permission, and to step back and think about, what can I clarify in the system so people know what they actually don't need to ask for permission for anymore.
This is
There's a matrix here, Chris. I just recognized there's a matrix. On the right side of the matrix is haircut, tattoo, and or hats, haircuts, and tattoos, and then the other side is below the waterline or above the waterline, and you can create your own Eisenhower matrix, but using those as the columns and the rows. That's nerdy, though.
This is so fundamental that it's something we skip over a lot of times, which is we expect, like, we come in and we set a culture, and then we get frustrated with our employees if they make too big of a decision without including us, or if they're coming to us for every decision.
Yeah.
But mostly we don't set the expectations. We don't say, hey, this is the waterline.
Yep.
This is what we care about. And this is where I want to be brought into the loop. This is where it'd be nice if, but you have the power to make that decision, but we'd love to know about it. Yep. Versus this is you, and you own this portion. And I guess the question really for both of you is, in really innovative organizations and fast growing organization, is my job as the CEO and the founder to really, to extend the metaphor where it wasn't supposed to go, is it to raise the waterline where it's like, look, I'm going to really try to push responsibility and decision-making down within the organization? Jurriaan,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I think I sometimes tell people, like, as a CEO, and if your company is growing, you should be working a lot more on the system rather than in the system. Try to create be more like instead of being the traffic cop, be the designer of the roads, and make sure that the work flows without you needing to be there. So it's really about really different role of creating those systems tolerances, and a really good example is when it's an example I often use is like when somebody joins your company and they want to buy a new laptop. It's such a simple decision, but depending on how much clarity you've given, like maybe there's no process for that, and maybe I just want a bigger monitor, or maybe I just want a better mouse, like whatever that is. Like, what can people just go and buy that and get the reimbursement for that? Have you made explicit those spending thresholds? It can really be. It's an example decision. It's such a simple decision. Most founders, we like, of course, spend that money and go get the best tool. Most of them really don't care and they really don't want to hear about it. But for somebody joining a company, that feels really risky. Like, oh, can I really do that? Can I spend company money or not? And it's like, we just have to realize that founders, by nature, have a very different threshold for those kinds of things. So yeah, you have to really do the work to make it explicit.
Anthony, this is one of those, I think, critically important things, which is why, founders and CEOs, oftentimes founders can be pretty lousy CEOs because of their need to control.
Right.
And because of their need to, sort of be the one who's creating this thing. But I think it's a skill, Anthony. I mean, is this something you can develop, do you think?
Well, it's not something that you're born with. I think it is only created through development and experience and understanding what's the difference between a hat and a tattoo and a guillotine, right? when it comes to a decision, and that, I think that just comes with time and experience. And some people are just better at it than others. But yes, it absolutely can be developed. I do want to tug on a string that you kind of mentioned, Jurriaan, this notion of, so when you're getting into decisions that are, risky with high consequences, there's this notion of optionality, like maximizing, like the Greenspan. I don't know if I've read anything on Greenspan, but he always looked at making a decision that allowed for future flexibility. Can you talk a little bit about that?
No, I can't. Can you?
I don't want to. Yeah.
No, it's something I'm not so aware of. So I'm going to learn something from you.
Chairman, that's the.
Yeah. So essentially, whenever making a decision, the concept is this: when you have a high risk decision to make with high consequences, the answer should be the thing that mitigates the risk, the least risky. You shouldn't be striving for the biggest reward. You should be deciding for the decision that gives you the most flexibility if you're wrong, right?
Right.
So things that you can adjust along the way.
Yeah. Not
something that you don't sign a 2-year contract in a circumstance where you're making a decision about something super risky, as an example. But there's other examples. Anyway, I'm sure you've run across this concept, but it's just you just haven't heard that was associated with Greenspan.
No, correct. Yeah, and I often tell people to look for a decision that is safe to try, as a different way of framing a decision, rather than, is this the right choice? Is it the perfect decision? Do we all agree? Instead, you ask, is this safe to try? And if it's not safe to try, well, then have the conversation, like, how can we make it safe? Meaning, like you said, like, can we do it for a shortened term? Can we run an experiment? Can we do it in a small corner of the organization and test it out? Can we test it with a limited amount of customers and test it out? But it promotes risk taking, because if we, the only way, often, like I said before, the only way to know if something really works is to try it out. And that also goes, like you said, for vendors or contracts,
or even employees. Can you hire an employee as a contractor to start, or as a part-time, while they're moonlighting for you? So you can, and employees are really risky hires, are really risky decisions. So
Yeah.
I used to always try to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's get into the guts of this. So we've talked about one of the frameworks, which is talking about the size of the decision. But now I'm faced with these decisions, and I know that I need to speed up decisions. I know that the pace of my organization, if I want to keep up, compete, and win in the modern environment, the decision not to make decisions is can be problematic.
Yeah.
And so help me think through what are some things that I can do to help speed up that process.
Yeah. Yeah. So it does depend a little bit on what is holding you back from taking the decision. But there's two things that I really like doing. One I already touched upon a little bit, and I'm going to expand a bit on it, which is this concept of making a decision that is safe to try. So it's not only that decision making is difficult; it's also difficult to talk about decisions. Often when we go into your management team, your leadership team, it's like, oh, let's figure out if this is the right decision to make, and you can go into a debate, and people have their opinion, and it takes a long time. And one way to speed up that specific process of processing a decision with your leadership team is to first of all bring a proposal. Bring a written one-page document where it's like, this is the context. This is what I propose to do. This is my hypothesis of what might happen. These are some of the data points. These are some of the alternatives I considered, and this is the first step I'm gonna take. So writing that down in one page really accelerates the discussion. So it's like, this person already thought about all these things, so I don't have to go and ask and throw things at them. And then you can go, you know what? I want to hear everyone's perspective. I want to hear everybody's reactions and questions. And then I'm going to ask, is this safe to try? So it's a different process of talking about decision making where there's a clear proposal that's written down, and we go for consent rather than consensus. So that's one thing that really helps.
Yeah,
the other thing
I want to touch on that because there's this concept of consensus management.
Yeah.
And consensus management, while very inclusive, is slow.
Yeah.
And I think to your point, slow is the enemy.
Yeah, so the good thing about consensus is that you get a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different inputs. And as part of that process, you might get buy-in. So it's easier to execute a decision the moment it's been made. But you don't have to choose between consensus and going fast and not having all those benefits. Consent is really a way to get out of that. It's a step-by-step process where you go and ask for perspectives, you share questions and lessons learned, and you integrate every perspective into a proposal, and you're looking for consent. Is it safe to try? And you're also going to solicit objections. Like, is this really not safe to try? And somebody has to speak up and say, it's not safe to try for this reason. And that person also has the obligation to help the proposer get to a safe to try proposal. So there's a bunch of mechanisms, a bit technical, I admit that, but there's a way to get the benefits of consent while also going fast.
Well, I mean, this is what you were talking about is we were talking about Bezos earlier. Famously, Amazon, when you walk into a meeting, the first portion of every meeting is to ingest a memo, which is specifically written, like you were saying, which is here's the problem, and you're expected to read in silence, and then everybody has the context for the debate.
Yep.
But also famously at Amazon, Bezos said, if like I make the decisions. It's like if all things being equal, I'm going to be the one that makes decisions. If you disagree with me, you got to let me know. But if nobody's going to be willing to make a decision, we're going to go with what I want to do.
Right.
So there is a firm decision-making hierarchy in that organization as well.
Yeah. And the other thing that it's important to acknowledge that not every person should sometimes have the equal say on every decision. It's helpful to say, you know what, maybe when it comes to investments, we should listen to the CFO's opinion a bit more than, I don't know, the chief HRO person. So it's also about clarifying the roles we play in those decision-making things, and acknowledging that sometimes we have to get certain people's advice rather than getting everybody's opinion, and just trust that's the way. And that's the other part I wanted to say, that the advice process is also a really good way to unlock decision-making, where somebody feels a need for a decision, and they are going to think about all the people that they should get advice from before making the decision. They're going to have conversations with those people and say, you know what, this is the thing I have in mind. What's your advice? And then they basically say, you know what, this is my decision after integrating everybody's advice. This is the advice I ignored, and this is the advice I integrated, and this is the decision. You stick with the person being the decision-making holder. And yeah, you have to go and ask advice from everybody that's either more experienced with this or the people that are affected. So it's another mechanism for unlocking decision-making across the organization.
Anthony, the problem with that is that is absolutely the best way, in my opinion. But you have to figure out a way to build relationships with people where you know that even if you don't go with that decision, with what their advice is, that they still feel valued and heard. Is that true, Anthony?
Yeah, decisions by committee. If you're looking to make fast decisions, if you're looking to make slow decisions, that's the best way to do it. Decisions by committee. If you need to be nimble, you need to quote George W. Bush, you need a decider.
Yeah,
you really kind of do. And regardless of the bad decisions that he's made, he was fundamentally right on that point of view. And as long as you don't make emotional, crappy decisions, and you make good decisions that are thoughtful, and you show your work on how you came to that decision, you're gonna garner trust from the team that chooses to work with you. Yeah. So it's not just that it's your job to make the decision; it's also your job to justify to the decision to the team that they're choosing to back a leader that doesn't make seat of the pants decisions.
Yeah, it's a great point. I want to give a management talk to high school coaches and say, high school coaches, if you're making a decision, if you're benching a player, that's fine. You need to make the decision that's best for the team, but you also need to have the courage to talk to that kid. And most of them don't. It's the same thing in management. You need to have the courage to say, hey, here's the decision, here's the factors I'm weighing, and I'm going to go with your decision, or I'm not going to go with your advice, or ignore this advice. But everybody was heard and felt heard. Jurriaan, just last kind of framework here. I'm sitting with a big, tough decision. What are some other things I can do? Do you set a time limit on that? Do you start to say, what are the other ways I can frame this process?
Yeah, the question you should ask yourself is, what is the thing I can do to maximize my learning in making this decision? So what is the thing I really need to decide now so I can try it out and figure out if this is the right direction? Because knowing that this is not the final decision you're ever going to make about this, it's just the first step. So is this indeed do we need to try it for a month, for 2 months, for 3 months? Do we need to try it in a certain place? I think that's an important frame of mind to get out of the analysis paralysis, like you said before. The other thing is is it really worth spending time and money gathering more information to delay the decision? And that's often overlooked. It feels like it's free to delay a decision, but it's not.
Yeah. And putting the actual weight on that, because sometimes we wrestle with decisions that frankly are just not there. And so starting to be okay, what are the actual decisions? But I think it's one of the really big lessons of being a CEO. Before we go into the speed round, Jurriaan, any other advice? How was I found, or anything else I can use to think about how to speed up decision making?
I think a really big thing that we didn't talk about yet is how to deal with failure, and especially as the CEO, if something goes wrong, it's really a make or break moment for the culture. People will look at you and see, how does this person react? Is this person going to bite my head off, or is this person going to value the fact that we tried something and it failed, and it was safe to fail? And I think that's a really important. As a founder, it's your money as well that's on the line, so it's harder to stay calm and to go and give that person a compliment. You know what? You tried something. You were brave. We learned something from it. At the time, maybe this was the right choice. But you know what? Sometimes we cannot control reality, and we just have to face what's happened. So yeah, it's a key thing. If you are, go ahead.
There's actually a good story on this. It's an IBM story, and I don't remember where I read it, but this manager made a really bad decision. It cost IBM like millions of dollars, and he went into his boss's office fully expecting to get fired, and his boss says, well, what do you think of what happened? He's like, I think you should fire me. And he's like, are you kidding? It just cost me millions of dollars to teach you never to do this again. I'm not going to let you go.
Right.
Because that would be millions of dollars wasted. So just don't, like, now you know.
Yeah, exactly. And in my speeches that I do at companies, I often use the example of a pit stop in the Formula One world, a pit stop that failed. And the thing is that when something fails, it's often easy to just go and blame a person. But instead, Formula One teams really understand that they really have to look at all the possible factors that went into this error. And it's only if you really observe the whole system, you're able to find the nuggets of the things you should improve to prevent it next time. It's often not just one person's mistake.
I think it's a really good point. Also, everything that goes wrong on this podcast is Anthony's fault. It has nothing to do with me.
Of course, I make all the decisions, so it's easy to point the finger at the person that makes all the decisions.
It's a good point, because I'm pretty much along for the ride. All right, Jurriaan, let's do the speed round. Dramatic clap for Anthony hitting the cue well.
I got the cue.
Well.
I was ready.
See how slow I said speed round too? It was, All right, Jurriaan, better to make fast wrong decisions or slow right ones?
Fast wrong decisions is more valuable.
Should founders have decision-making framework or trust their gut?
Framework.
Weekly leadership team meetings to make decisions, good rhythm or a waste of time?
No, it's a good rhythm if you do them right.
Do you need everyone's buy-in for a major decision? I think we've already answered this, but let's just do it.
Of course not.
Yeah. Should you document your decision-making process and learnings?
Yes.
This is one thing we didn't talk about and want to get to the lessons, but just one other point here, which is I think that, do you recommend that when you make those decisions, when you create them, how do you create records of those for the companies? Like, do you put them up on a poster, or, how do you publish them?
Well, transparency is a big part of accelerating decision making, because it allows people to learn. It allows people to have trust in the process, like you said, that people's advice is being followed. But it also can become cumbersome if you want to do it for every decision. So that doesn't make sense to me. I would say, like, for the big, more consequential decisions, it's helpful to publish those proposals. If you're going to use written proposals anyway for the big decisions, well, why not make them visible somewhere, and you can go back to them and look at that.
I think it's a terrific point. Anthony, really great conversation.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. All right, so the concept that I've never heard before that I really like, make roads instead of being a traffic cop. I think that's not just decision making, that's also just a great leadership quote that I'm going to use forever. So I found the person that came up with 3 types of decisions: hats, haircuts, and tattoos, is actually from Annie Duke, who's a famous poker player. So I love that concept. The waterline concept from Gore-Tex: clarify when things blow up. What your company can survive. So define your water line. Optionality, which is a Greenspan. Also, you mentioned like make something safe to try, kind of this similar concept. So maximize future flexibility when a decision is super risky and with high consequences. And the final one that I have is, bad decisions. You're going to make bad decisions. Your team's going to make bad decisions. Value the effort, value the risk that they took, and make it safe for your team to fail.
Really incredibly good and important, wisdom in those. Deep dive recommendations, couple of good ones here. The Knowledge Project, The Art of Decision Making by Shane Parrish. It's a podcast. There's an article from Harvard Business Review, The Decision Making Process that will help you solve problems. I still think that one of the most important business books ever written, Thinking Fast and Slow, by Danny Kahneman and Tversky. And, I heard that you have a couple books there, Jurriaan. You've got a few. So the one that Forbes loved, and we mentioned in the opening, Formula X, How to Reach Extreme Acceleration in Your Organization. But your new book is called Unblock. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Unblock is a book about the 6 most common blockers in organizational success. And decision making is one of them. So I have a full chapter on it, including all the concepts that you heard on the show and how to apply them in your leadership team.
That's pretty amazing. How do we get in touch with you? How do we follow? How do we, go to Amazon? You can order these books now, right?
Yeah, both books are on Amazon if you just type in my name, or you can go to unblockbook.net to get more information about the book. And I'm personally most active on LinkedIn, so I'm always happy to get into a conversation.
And, you could just harass him to come to Denver because he's still decided in July. He's like,
Yeah.
Is it worth it?
Yeah.
I probably have to hang out with Anthony and Chris if I come to Denver. I'm not sure. Jurriaan, it has been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed this conversation. Anthony, what do we have coming up?
On Thursday, we're going to be talking about when to coach up and when to let go with a guest, Carly Pippin. Looking forward to that. For all of you listening in, thank you so much for tuning in and supporting the podcast like you do. We have Chris, we have the best audience. I think of any podcast on the planet, we absolutely have the best podcast. And I'm telling you that because I'm hoping that you go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a great review.
Well, there's a play here. We talked about the Franklin effect. You guys can look it up, Franklin.
Yeah. So if you're listening to us, whatever channel you're listening to us on, we are also on your favorite channel. So if you go to howtofounder.com, you can connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of the things. Really, again. We just answered the question. We just had a question. Is there any way to re-listen to this talk?
It's Anthony. They don't want to listen. So you can just,
No, Dana's asking, is there a way to re-listen to the she's asking, she only got us midway through. So yes, you can re-listen on LinkedIn, but also go to YouTube, youtube.com, or just go to howtofounder.com and you can listen to us at any of those places. Again, thank you so much. We'll talk to you guys in a couple days. Bye.
Thank you.